Welcome to the Wheeler Dealer Know-How, the book that will tell you everything you need to know about buying, doing up and selling a modern classic. Right from my earliest years growing up in Brixton, South London, I've loved cars. My dad was a famous car customiser back in his heyday, so I reckon that's where I must have got it from. He had loads of interesting motors over the years and probably a few rubbish ones as well. And I can remember feeling so excited when he was taking me to school in his latest creation or favourite. With older brothers and sisters in the family, I had plenty of people to learn from too when it comes to cars and driving, so I was never short of inspiration. And I'll never forget the great times I had cruising around London with my brothers. But where did all this lead? Well, to being a wheeler dealer, of course. Now, you probably know me best from television, but that's not how I started. Not by a long way. For that, you have to go back to the heady days of the 1980s and a smoky snooker hall in southwest London. I know, snooker is a long way from car dealing, bear with me on this one. For that's when I got my break that would launch me on the road to becoming a wheeler dealer. I was managing the snooker hall when a fella walked in that was to change my life forever. He was known as Peter Stapleton, and to everybody else he was called Budgie. Now, the reason they called him Budgie is because he was a dead ringer for a then famous television star called Adam Faith. He had a partner who was known as the Major, and his name was John Henson. They owned this used car haven that was St George's Garages in Tooting, a smart showroom full of shiny Jaguars, Ford Granadas and Range Rovers. He offered me a break of £200 a week and £100 for every car I sold. I never looked back. But things weren't quite as simple back in those days. Arriving on my first day in my polyester shirt and shiny loafers, my patch wasn't going to be the flash showroom, but the converted petrol station over the road where they sold all the part exchanges and jalopies. A world of slightly rusty Ford Cortinas and Vauxhall Vixas. But worse was to come. Before I was let loose on a real punter, I was introduced to the art of car washing. And Peter, he had his own way of doing that. A few cold, wet and miserable hours later, I transformed this dingy blue Volkswagen Golf into the perfect used car. And I'd learned from the first day many valuable lessons which are still with me today, and that's knowing how to prepare a car properly for sale. It's vital to being a real wheeler dealer, and it's something I'll be telling you a lot more in the coming pages. So I'd made it. I'd become a used car salesman, and let me tell you, I was absolutely hooked. I sold 11 cars in my first week, and the sight of Peter peeling money from that wad of notes at the end of the week was something I'll never forget. It wasn't all plain sailing though. There were some tough times, but Peter was always there with encouragement and a reassuring word. None were tougher than when my lovely other half, Michelle, was hit by a serious illness. And 3 months later, and they were long months, let me tell you, we were big in debt and I needed to do something and do it fast. Our rescue came in the form of £4,000, which I got as a windfall. I sold a chandelier, but that's such a long story, I can't go into it now. And a trip to the car auction, where I bought 2 cracking motors, a pearlescent white Renault 5 GT Turbo and a white Peugeot 205 GTI. Using all the car preparation skills I'd learnt at St George's Garages. See, I told you they were important. I set about turning them into a couple of great used cars. I doubled my money and I was back in business. Don't get me wrong, I had a great time working for Budgie and the Major back in Tooting and Alexander Cars in Tulse Hill, where I eventually ended up. From BMWs that seemed rooted to the forecourt to a full Cortina that wouldn't turn left. I'd seen it all. I even managed to sell the most expensive car I've ever sold, even to this day. An absolutely beautiful Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible, which I sold to none other than Philip Green, the now famous retail magnate, for the princely sum of £127,000. That car looked amazing, and the memories of me cruising down a King's Road with the top down and the sun shining will stay with me forever. But what I really wanted was to be my own boss, and the Renault and the Peugeot were just the start of a fantastic journey. As I mentioned before, I've learned some great skills back in those days. How to buy the right car, how to prepare it properly, and most importantly, how to sell it. This book will tell you how you can do those things. So if you want to be a wheeler dealer, just like me, keep reading.